As someone who has been watching this show ever since it began, I just have to say that's probably the best episode we got since season 3, if not just season 2. And I completely mean that. Let's talk about it. Hey YouTubers, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell over by the subscriber button to notify you every single time I upload. Enjoy the video. So this episode 6 of American Horror Story Apocalypse, starts with Madison Montgomery and Behold actually taking over the murder house. This is something they kind of showed us in the teaser, but they didn't really show us how this was going to play out. And I have to admit, this episode had me from the get-go. Just Behold just saying, you know, we're going to burn some sage because this house is completely haunted. I was completely dying. I couldn't help myself. It was so funny because we all know after watching the first season just how deadly and manipulative this house can be. So just seeing this witch and warlock actually go into this house and try to deal with all the spirits there was an interesting prospect in and of itself, but the very fact that we were going to get Jessica Lange and everyone else back from season 1 was just one of the best things they could actually do here. So anyway, let's jump right into this. So when they bought the house, it was actually filled with strong spirits. I mean, of course, any American Horror Story fan knows that, and they had to, as Behold said, do some kind of ritual or spell in order to draw everyone out, in order to let them see them despite nobody wanting them to be seen, right? So that is how we end up having the major interactions within this episode. And as I've already said before in some of my other videos, this was the longest episode we've gotten in quite some time, and so there was just a whole lot to cover. In fact, you know, I might not really cover every little piece of thing that we got from this episode, but man, there's just, it was really freaking good. First off, I want to just go over Tate's character because, as I've already gone over in another video, Tate has animosity towards Michael. There's something about him that makes him think that Michael isn't his son, as they kind of hinted at the very end of the episode when Madison allows Violet to actually get back with Tate, and seeing how remorseful Tate is for everything that's happened up until this point. The very fact that Tate isn't as ridiculous as some of the people in the comment section have been kind of implying, like he would have wanted all this stuff to happen. And the very fact that Michael might be his child is something that people were not really paying attention towards, or really kind of, oh yeah, this is what he wanted, this was the kind of evil that he was. They went through great length in this episode to show that Tate might have been evil because of the house and not really because he was evil. And now that Michael has left the house, what is there left for Tate, especially Evan Peters as a character in this show, someone who is bound and destined to come back? I think this episode, you know, tell me in the comment section below whether you agree or not, but I think this episode really pinpoints this idea that maybe Tate, if he is the rubber man, I mean, that's still up in the air, but if he is the rubber man, he can actually be the one to take down Michael at the end of the day, or at least help in some way. That would be cathartic for a lot of people. It would be a redemption arc that was started in this episode for his character and his relationship with not only Violet, but Vivian and Ben and all the other Harmon family, if not his mother and everyone else from the murder house. He owes a lot to that house. It'd be something I love to follow throughout this season. So I'm just going to leave that theory there. Hope everyone agrees with it. I mean, tell me in the comment section below whether you like that idea or not. But the very fact that Violet and Tate are actually together now, awesome. I love that love story, even if it's just ghosts and it doesn't really matter, and who knows what's going to happen with the murder house after the bomb drops. But for right now, as Madison says at the end of the episode, you know, just letting Ghost bone despite everything else is going on, it's just enough of a win for me to make this episode definitely worth it. But let's get into the main fireworks of this episode. And honestly, hats off to Sarah Paulson. Like I said, probably one of the best episodes of American Horror Story since season 3, if not season 2, if we're really being clear, in terms of hype, character, and just simply everything that they did in this episode brought back the feels from the original episodes, from the original season of the show, and I can't wait to see where they go with it for the rest of the season. But bringing in Constance after Behold and Madison actually put in that spell, they're able to see all the spirits, and they come up against Tate and Ben having another one of their conversations. Ben walks away. He's still the sad sack that we remember from season 1. Obviously, Tate doesn't want to really talk to anyone, but who is going to talk to them first and foremost? Obviously, it is, as she says when she walks down the stairs, Jessica Lange introduces herself by saying, "This is my bleeping house," right? That is exactly true, and every American Horror Story fan knows that to be true. Just seeing her on screen, having her in this episode, having her in this show again is exciting enough. And if this episode wasn't already hype for all of its connections and going back to the past and making us really nostalgic for where this show used to be, all the characters that we once knew and everything else like that, it has to be Jessica Lange's character coming back in force in this episode. And one of the things they did, which I thought was actually kind of interesting, they had her tell her story about raising Michael. And they really picked up where the first season left off, and they kind of went through that time skip that they did in the original season. They allowed us to see what happened to Constance as she was raising Michael, and the very fact that he didn't age as quickly as we all might have thought at the end of the first season was actually quite shocking. She got to raise the kid as he took out spiders, ants, and bugs until he eventually upgraded into animals and then also human beings, which is where we really left off in the first season. And just her and various lines that Jessica Lange was saying throughout this entire episode, how she became sickened by the smell of roses, and all of that other stuff is just so fantastic. It was really one of the best things that this season could have given us, and I really felt, just looking at what they did, man, her role in this show is so fleeting. We're not going to actually get as much Jessica Lange as we wanted in this television series, but any amount that they could give us was always going to be epic, and I don't think that they wasted the time they had with her. Seeing how she was reacting to Michael, how she was raising him, and how she inevitably took the easy way out, as they said throughout the episode, in order to get away from him and stop the nonsense and actually be with her family once and for all in the murder house. I mean, you have to put it up for the writers. They knew what to do with the character. Whether they completely understand or had enough time to really focus on these characters, the murder house in general, it was pretty awesome. I mean, noticeably, despite focusing on the Harmon family and everything else that happened in the first season, there's a lot of noticeable absences, and I'm not going to take the time to go over every single thing that wasn't explored or shown throughout this entire episode, but I thought it was pretty nice having focus on Constance, Ben, and Vivian as the main supporters, and then also giving Violet her little bit of focus at the very end of the episode, because if there was any characters that we really needed to focus on, give happy endings, or send off in a really nice way, it was those three. Of course, as I say that, I also am forgetting about Moira, who was the maid in Murder House, who actually gets a nice send-off. The only way Constance wants to talk to anybody is if they get rid of her. They dig up her bones and bury her next to her mother. They walk off in the distance together, and that's going to be a nice little happy ending for those two. But as I said, the main focus is on Constance, which was the first half of this episode. In an extendedly long episode, we had then Ben explaining how after Constance killed herself in the murder house in order to escape Michael, he was trying to raise Michael as his own, treating him as his son. And the very first thing I want to mention here is there's been a lot of people in the comment section talking about the other twin child that was supposed to be born at the same time Michael was supposed to be born in Murder House. And a lot of people, at least they're tending to forget that that was actually a boy. They reaffirmed that in this episode, the fact that that baby died and its soul is still left in the house. Ben and Vivian are still raising that child despite it being in its baby infant body. At the same time, Michael was born, and being the Antichrist was much more powerful. He survived, and then obviously he became the person that we know today in American Horror Story Apocalypse. So that's one thing I just kind of want to smooth over here. Mallory is not the twin sibling of Michael, and they really went a long way in order to explain that in this episode if anyone is still absolutely confused about that. But we have Michael and Ben actually having a father-son relationship together, which I kind of liked. I mean, I like the idea that he is trying to bond with someone that he believes is actually his son. But the breaking point there was when the actual house sold and Michael dressed up in the Rubberman suit and killed the two women who were trying to move into the house. And then not only killed them, but evaporated their souls, sent them away for eternity. They can't even live in the murder house. That was freaking crazy. I'm sure, as Vivian said, one of the reasons she was convinced after the Church of Satanic Rituals or whatever came into the house, worshiping Michael and actually doing a festival for him, killing a random girl, taking out her heart, and allowing Michael to actually eat that heart so he can talk to his father for the first time. This was all building up for Vivian to actually go into his room and try to kill him. Of course, Michael, being as powerful as he is not going to let that happen anytime soon. So he tries to kill Vivian. Tate actually ends up saving Vivian, and that's one of the reasons that Violet wants to be with Tate at the end of this episode. There's just so much going on here, and I'm sure I'm missing this, that, or the other. I'm not really focusing on a whole lot here, but it really seems like they're trying to build up the last couple episodes just how powerful Michael is and exactly where he comes from. That's this whole episode. And the way that they decided to do it, at least in my opinion, was the best possible way that they were actually going to do this. Having Michael's whole character arc be told by characters that we actually know and love from the original season was a really, really good idea. And I still think it opens up the door for more people to actually come back. I don't think we're done with the murder house here. I don't think that these characters are just simply going to be in this episode and none other. In fact, if anyone's coming back, as I already said, I think it's going to be Tate, Evan Peters' character, for the bunker or something else like that. Maybe the apocalypse, maybe something Michael does opens it up, and these characters, like in Hotel or like in Murder House, who are stuck and can't move, are actually allowed to roam through free. What did they do then? In this episode, Tate showed that he had some animosity towards Michael. He doesn't think that Michael should be considered his son, even though Michael, in an early stage of his development or whatever, despite the fact that he was already a teenager, was considering Tate maybe, or someone he should look up to as his father. Tate doesn't like that. Tate has found romance. Tate has found, happiness for once in his long life as a ghost, and even in his real reality. He is going to be mad at what Michael does here. He's going to have a reason to go after Michael. That's what I'm really gearing up towards. That's what I really think is going to happen at the ending of this show. It seems like in the next episode, we're going to continue to cover the Coven Witches, the flashbacks, and really connect to where we were at the beginning of the season. Now, I don't really like that. I wish that we'd get back to the whole apocalypse story. I feel like we have enough information thus far, but just to see how Michael actually won the day and the apocalypse actually happened, and how these witches came to the outpost the same way Michael did, that might be enough to get our interest. But I'm still holding out hope that at some point, maybe in episode 8 or something, we can take the last 3 episodes of this season to focus on the end goal of this story. So anyway, guys, hope everyone's having a fantastic day. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that bell over by the subscriber button to notify you every single time I upload. It's been real.